88ാമത് ശിവഗിരി തീർത്ഥാടനത്തിന്റെ 6ാം ദിവസമായ ഇന്ന് വ്യവസായം എന്ന വിഷയത്തിലുള്ള പ്രഭാഷണങ്ങളാണ് ഇപ്പോൾ നടന്നുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. ഒരു അന്താരാഷ്ട്ര സംരംഭകയുമായി നടത്തിയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു അഭിമുഖമാണ് ഇതിൽ ഇനി കാണാൻ പോകുന്നത്.
On behalf of Sivagiri Mutt, we invite BIAN to speak more about entrepreneurship. She is the founder of Hungry Labs. Over to the conversation.
Namaskaram. Welcome to this very special edition of Sivagiri THEERTHADANAM Expert Talk. Today we have with us BIAN Lee, the founder of Hungry Labs, joining us over Zoom all the way from California. BIAN is an entrepreneur, multiple TEDx speaker, a global coach, and a former investment banker who has been working with innovators and entrepreneurs around the world for the last 2 decades. She has her master's from MIT and has been working very closely with institutions like our own very Kerala startup mission. And BIAN also has a special connection to Varkala, where the Sivagiri Mutt is situated. Today, through this interview, we hope to learn her perspectives about global innovation and as a futurist about where the world is headed post-COVID. So without further delay, here is very happy to have with us BIAN Lee from California, the founder of Hungry Labs. Welcome, BIAN.
BIAN ഫിനാൻസ്, ഓപ്പറേഷൻസ്, ടെക്നോളജി, സോഷ്യൽ ഇന്നോവേഷൻ തുടങ്ങിയ മേഖലകളിൽ സജീവ സംരംഭക, ഗ്ലോബൽ സ്പീക്കർ, ഫ്യൂച്ചറിസ്റ്റ്, മുൻ നിക്ഷേപക ബാങ്കർ എന്നിങ്ങനെ വൈവിധ്യമാർന്ന മേഖലകളിൽ നിറസാന്നിധ്യം. ഭാവി തലമുറയെ നൂതന ആശയങ്ങളോടെ വാർത്തെടുക്കാൻ സഹായിക്കുന്ന ദി ഹംഗ്രി ലാബിന്റെ സ്ഥാപക CEO. സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യാം 88ാമത് ശിവഗിരി ആഗോള തീർത്ഥാടനത്തിലെ അഷ്ടലക്ഷ്യങ്ങളിൽ പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട വ്യാവസായിക സമ്മേളനത്തിലേക്ക് ഏറെ ആദരവോടും ബഹുമാനത്തോടും കൂടി BIAN Lee.
Tell me about the Ghana Queen Mother experience.
Yeah, so that was a once in a lifetime experience, completely unexpected. I was working in Ghana at the time. I had spent the summer there, working in a rural village in the middle of the rainforest on the border between Ghana and Togo. This was 2004, so a long time ago. And it seems like literally half a lifetime ago. And I was there working with the village community on helping establish a community vocational center for training for youth, as well as teaching them community development skills, a lot of those types of things, financial management. And at the end, I was about a week before I was to leave. And suddenly, we didn't have running water. We had to go get water from the wells. And I was on the way to collect water from the wells with the village women. And suddenly I hear this loud cheering and I see this huge crowd of women just running towards me. And I was completely caught off guard and I had no idea what was happening. And they suddenly just picked me up. A bunch of women just picked me up and then took me to someone's house. I was like, what is happening? And they made me disrobe and they said, and I was like, what is happening? And they showed me the tribal cloth and they said, this is your queen's robe. So we have to change you into this. And so they did that, like a bunch of women around me changing me. And then I come out and the whole village, and our village is divided into 4 sub-villages. So all the sub-villages came with the chiefs and the other queen mothers and everybody. And there was a huge procession and parade of people lined up with the drums, with the singing, welcoming me. And they gave me 2 young girls to lead me into the procession. And so I walked down the village road and everybody had come to greet me. And they said, we are thanking you for your service. You are one of us now. And, you will be installed as the queen mother of the village. And they went through the whole ceremony. All the village chiefs spoke. There was singing, there was dancing. And they basically honored me in that ceremony. It was the most touching thing, completely unexpected. I had no idea this was going to happen. And it was an unbelievable experience I'll never forget for the rest of my life. And it came with responsibilities with obviously with my village. And I'll forever have a connection to them no matter where I am in the world. I'm honorary Ghanaian, and I always consider that part of the world's my family and another home for me. And it was incredible, just the generosity and the spirit and the sense of community that has inspired me in so much of the work that I do. And that was just unbelievable. So that is one of my proudest honors and titles that I have. I have an official Ghanaian title called Queen Mother Mama Asinor II. And over there they just call me Mama. And it was so unbelievable. It's such an amazing country, amazing people, and it's something very special, and it's a very one of the biggest honors. Actually, the honor, the title that I have, I've seen many awards and things like that, but that was the title that has the most special meaning to me personally.
BIAN, from Ghana now, because we are from the Sivagiri Mutt, and this is the Sivagiri annual pilgrimage. So when the organizers were thinking about international experts to communicate, your name came to my mind first because you have a connection with Varkala. That's the place, and our viewers would instantly recognize when you have a connection there. So tell us about the Varkala experience and how it got a little bit prolonged this time due to COVID crisis as well.
Yeah, so I actually came to Varkala the first time in December 2018, and I was there, and I was planning to go to Goa. I had never heard of Varkala. And then my friend, who's Dutch, who had been to Varkala, who now lives in Singapore, had said, you should go to Varkala. Why go to Goa? He knows me very well. So I just took his advice. I didn't know anything about the place. But the minute I got there, I felt just at peace, at calm. There's an energy about the place, and I know it's a very spiritual place. There's a lot of yoga. There's a energy vortex on Papanasam Beach, right? Literally meaning sin crusher, right? So it has some type of enhanced meaning, at least, and so it's a very special place, and I felt it immediately. And so and I met an Ayurvedic doctor there. And so I had been going to her for the past 2 years, ever since I met her. And so last year I did a 21-day Panchakarma treatment. And then we also held retreats, Hungry Lab retreat there. And we also, we did a lot of work with, the yoga there, and a lot of healing workshops. Retreats. So last year we did a Hungry Lab Ikigai incubator where we had an international, some of our international folks came from Philippines, Taiwan, and it was just a great experience. And everybody that I recommend or bring to Varkala falls in love with the place, just because it's not just a great way to get away from the hustle and bustle of big city life, but it's a very calm place that you can absorb the ocean, the energy of the place, the spirituality of the place. And, there's a lot of Ayurveda there. And so just the whole general environment is very good. If you want to get away and you want to practice self-care, heal, get your, improve your wellness. And especially in our daily, very busy lives in the city, it's a great place to unwind and detox.
Now, since you already mentioned it, tell us more about the holistic Hungry philosophy and Hungry Labs.
Yeah, so the holistic philosophy comes from principles of Mother Nature, of regenerative ecology, right? If you look at a rainforest, and I like to joke that not half joke, but it's still, that what I learned about designing business ecosystems, I learned collecting soil samples in the African rainforest. And it's because when you are in nature, you are in the rainforest, and you see how Mother Nature has created a space in which everything has a role, everything has a place. And there's all these different symbiotic relationships and the interconnectedness of everything. right? And as humans, we have forgotten that interconnectedness. That's why we've ended up in so much trouble. Environmentally, the exacerbation between inequality and wealth. And COVID has laid bare how much trouble we have put ourselves in by having inherently, unequal systems and systems that are exploitative rather than regenerative. And so the holistic concept comes to how do we develop business, social innovation, and even human capital in a holistic way where we account for not just economic production and financial returns, but the sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a sense of actual societal contribution. Our Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in a famous speech in the 1960s, he talked about how we have our gross national product measures everything except what it actually truly means to have a great life, right?
Absolutely.
And I think with COVID has accelerated this shift, this type of thinking. And a lot of what we do is to help accelerate that shift to create a more purpose-driven life that that encourages systems thinking. So we see our interconnectedness with everything else. And going from an ego system to an ecosystem, right? And going from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism, looking at things at systems. And so when we think about that, it allows us to think bigger, think farther, to see how our consequences and our actions, economically, financially, all of these things make an impact, generations down the line. And so that is that philosophy of how can we create balance? How can we create long-term thinking versus short-term mentality? How can we create and understand how we connect with everything else? And how can we create win-win-win situations in a system that encourages collaboration versus hyper competition? And that's on the macro level. But ultimately, systems and organizations are comprised of individuals. Right? Individual people. So as individuals, how can we cultivate holistic human capital? So we are not ending up miserable, human beings that end up having midlife crises and stressed out with disease and stress and all of this stuff, that because we have forgotten our individual mission on this earth, our individual purpose, our calling, what makes us come alive, what brings us joy. And help happier people make happier families, right? We don't take our stress out on the children, right? We don't take it, and we don't project our fears and hurt and trauma to the next generation, right? Absolutely. And happy families make happy societies. Yep. So it's just a very simple concept, and it's something that indigenous communities from around the world practice already. And looking at farsighted, right? There's a concept called the 7th generation principle.
Absolutely. Yes.
And that is so important, especially now when climate change is so pressing upon us. Like, how do we make decisions that we will that will benefit the 7th generation going forward, and not be so short-sighted, so they have to suffer from our short-sighted mentality?
I'm glad you brought up the 7th generation thinking, because we are all caught up in this 7-day thinking where the weekend is what everybody looks forward to after the 5-day hectic work week. There's nothing much beyond that's thought about. You have traveled extensively, 30 countries where the network is. What brought you to the mission? How did the clarity come about this long-term thinking?
It's been my life's work in the fact that it is a culmination also of my own life experiences. And I have been blessed to have had diverse and abundant work, career, and study experiences across the globe, from ultra high net worth investment banking to poverty alleviation in various parts of Africa, right? So I've seen the spectrum, and it helps you get a wide and diverse perspective and acceptance and tolerance and understanding of different mindsets, different perspectives, and understand how they all fit together, and how, you know, the whole complex spider web of systems work together. And so for me, it was just connecting all the dots and all the lessons that I learned through each experience, and then seeing the patterns, right? Because when you observe enough and you look enough and you are curious enough, you start seeing the patterns, and the patterns present themselves to you, right? And when you work with enough people, you start understanding what makes humans tick, right? It doesn't matter where you are, there's certain universal things about humans, right? And so when you put all of those things together, it becomes very interesting, the kind of maps that you can make, both figuratively and literally, in terms of the connections, the opportunities, and the challenges. And so that's what's always been fascinating to me, just even from a purely personal and academic interest, is understanding how societies and individuals behave, and what drives us in terms of moving forward, and what drives innovation, and what drives humans from not behaving so well, right. And we've seen that, I'm in California right now, and in the US, where a lot of people don't want to wear masks, right? and even though it's for the greater good and for their own good. Absolutely. So it's fascinating, and it's also, we have to understand what makes us tick from an individual as well as a macro basis, to understand what's the best way to get us all there in the future safely, and in a way that benefits and is more inclusive to more people, not just the 1% or the billionaires. COVID has, we've seen, the billionaires have become, multi-billionaires. Absolutely. And while more people are being displaced and essential workers are going hungry. Yep. Right. And so so part of reimagining this future, it requires that holistic view. It requires that inclusive mentality. And that only comes from when you have the ability to see and connect all the dots and incorporate all these different types of perspectives, and see how everything fits together. Right. People like to joke that I'm the puzzle master at the Hungry Lab. Right. And everything is a puzzle, and it's been very interesting to see how everything unfolds, and it's constant evolution, constant change, constant innovation, because that's how life works. Nothing stays still, right? Right. Everything changes. And so a key lesson in business, you always have to be able to adapt. A key lesson in life for an individual, always be able to adapt, right? Bruce Lee would say, "Be water, my friend," right? and that would be, one of the key ethos of how we go about creating this future. There's this comic strip that shows somebody asking an audience, "Who wants change?" And everybody raises their hand, right? Then he asks the next question, "Who wants to change?" And nobody raises their hand. And so that is part of a lot of the work we do, is empowering people to empower themselves to create the future that they want, and the resources and the audacity to dream, right? And the inclusivity to be able to do that, whether you are, a kid, in India, or a kid in Africa, or a kid in, Mexico, or a kid in Southern California. And so that is what we truly believe. And this digital transformation, especially after COVID, has forced everybody to go online, even the people who are resisting, has really helped us. And we've grown tremendously this year in terms of the students we've been able to reach, because the schools have been so cooperative in this digital transformation. And the hunger and demand for the type of the education and the topics that we teach in terms of future skills, not just the technical skills, but the next generation of self skills how to learn, right? The future of work is essentially the future of learning. And the future of learning is actually the future of being. How do we want to show up in this post-COVID humanity? And so that is what keeps me, up at night, or actually, no, I make sure I get my 8 hours of sleep. That's something that's non-negotiable. But what drives me, and when I put my mad scientist hat on, those are the questions that I ask, and we're constantly working with our partners, with our members, with our community around the world to evolve and get those answers and adapt.
Now, way back in 1928, when they started off on this Sivagiri annual pilgrimage, Sree Narayana Guru had identified 8 goals that should be the purpose of the pilgrimage, which are all connected to learning and self-development. One of them way back then was entrepreneurship. So that's 1928. So with almost a couple of decades of your experience working with innovators and entrepreneurs around the world, tell us how that mindset shift into an entrepreneurial one actually transforms the individual. You would have so many examples of having seen that, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it builds not just resilience. I like to say it actually makes us regenerative. Entrepreneurship drives a lot of the key future skills. Problem solving, right? How to observe and think how to solve a problem. Entrepreneurs are problem solvers by heart, right? They just now are able to get people to pay for it, which is good, because that's how you actually sustain your idea, right? And they are sometimes they are out of the boxers. A lot of times the most successful entrepreneurs are folks that aren't in the field. They just they are in a separate field, so they apply a new lens, so they're able to innovate, versus the people who have been in that field and are stuck in the same thinking, right? And so it's that creative thinking and the sheer grit and determination, because entrepreneurship, it's like an emotional roller coaster.
It is.
Right? There's highs, there's lows, and it fluctuates, in many times during even a day. You're like, oh my God, this is the best. Oh my God, this is the worst. Oh my God,
I remember Ben Horowitz in his Hard Things About Hard Things. He says there are only 2 emotions for an entrepreneur: ecstasy and terror. So I
exactly. And so it helps you get to know yourself. You have to ask the questions when things get hard, like, why am I doing this? There are so many other easy ways to make money, right? So it helps you connect with yourself and evaluate, sometimes through hard lessons, why you're doing something, right? Is the why big enough? Is that, it helps you connect with your mission. If your mission is big enough, you can withstand the hard times, because you see the bigger picture, why you're doing it, and it's for an important cause, right? And it doesn't have to be big. If your why is you want to open up a mom and pop shop and take care of your family, go do that. That's great, right? So the why is different for each individual, but the why has to be strong enough for you to be able to withstand when times are tough and no one believes in you, and you're not making money, and you're you're about to lose your house, right? Can you still keep going? Because a lot of times it's always darkest before the dawn. It always feels like when we're about to give up, that's when the breakthrough happens, right? And if we can only keep on going for one more week, one more month, and so it teaches you a lot of those lessons. Like they say, a relationship is the fastest teacher of how you handle your emotions, right? And so is entrepreneurship, and everything in life. I like to compare to dating and relationships, right? When you're looking for a co-founder, that's like looking for a partner, right? Startups last 7 to 13 years, like a lot of marriages. So you always have to deal with a lot of ups and downs, and how conflict resolution, right? How to work in a team. These are all essential life skills. How to bounce back from rejection, right? Customer will say no to you, right? How do you bounce back? An investor will say no to you. How do you bounce back? And so, and speaking of Varkala and speaking of rejection, I'm not sure if you know this. You might. I was told that Uber was actually born in Varkala. So yeah, so the founder Travis got his team, and they actually coded the first version of Uber in Varkala. Yeah, and he actually went through like I think 800 some investors before he got his first big deal.
Correct.
Right,
Correct.
800 no's.
Yeah.
Right. So it not everybody can handle it, and that's totally fine. Right. Not everybody has that risk appetite. Totally fine. Everyone's different. But even if you're not an entrepreneur, learning entrepreneurship skills will help you in anything you do.
Correct.
Right? Even if you have a regular job, it'll help you, right? Look at things from a different perspective, problem solve, teamwork, resiliency, being able to handle rejection, all of these things. And so that is something that, and being able to be scrappy, right? You can do anything if you have money, but can you do the same thing when you are bootstrapped, right? And how can you think innovatively and solve problems when you don't have a budget, right? And so it forces you to innovate, right? They say necessity is the mother of invention. So that is, what a lot of the takeaways from entrepreneurship that can benefit everybody.
I know, and I have heard you before, being very articulate and very clear about Ikigai. But I would like you to, if you can spare a few minutes to tell us, because you're so passionate about it, about how Ikigai can just be that foundational philosophy for life.
Yes. So Ikigai, for those that are unfamiliar, it's a Japanese term. And the Japanese have words for a lot of beautiful things that don't exist in English. And Ikigai is one of them. And it basically means your reason for being. And it's the bliss point between what you're good at, what you're great at, what you love to do, what the world needs, and how you can get paid. Right. And everyone's Ikigai is different, but it fulfills, your passion, your mission, your vocation, and your profession. Right. And that is that point where we find the ultimate satisfaction in our journey here, and knowing our why of why we're here, why are we doing what we're doing, using our skills, and being able to sustain it through an income and making an impact because the world needs it. And that is important and applies on an individual level, so we can get the ultimate fulfillment and meaning that we make for ourselves and do we define for ourselves in this life. And it also works for organizations. Every organization has their own Ikigai, right? And so, and at a macro level, even societies have their Ikigai. Yeah. The whole economic principle of comparative advantage, right? And it is one macro component of this. So it's important because it helps people assess themselves and figure out the way that they can do what they love and get paid for it while making a difference. And that ultimately we've seen people find the most contentment. And again, going back to happy people, happy families, happy societies.
Wonderful. Now, B, you are an experienced futurist, if I could call that. I mean, that's kind of like an oxymoron, but somebody who keeps looking at the future rather meticulously. So, and you got an unexpected amount of time here in Trivandrum and Kerala when this COVID crisis started. I'm pretty sure it was very meditative to sit and think about how the world would change post-COVID. So what are your predictions? Where do you see the world headed once we hopefully will come out of this crisis in the few months down the lane? What are the big changes? You already talked about the digital interface coming in.
Yes. So I was in lockdown for like 7 months in Trivandrum. So I do spend quite amount of time in India, but I hadn't imagined to spend 7 months under those circumstances. But it was a great experience to not have to be on the road so much and actually be able to have a lot more time to just sit and think and observe. So to your question, there's there's no way we will be going back to normal.
Right.
People want to, but that normal, we need to get that out of their minds. It's not happening. Even if we do have a vaccine, it's going to be changed. Countries will be demanding, COVID passports, right? The documentation to make sure you've been vaccinated before you travel. The businesses that closed, it's going to be a while before we see that significant bounce back, right? The stock market, at least in the US, has not been a good indicator of the actual economy in terms of jobs and livelihoods, right? And so we're going to see more a shift more towards finding meaning in people's professions, right? The millennials started driving that trend.
Yes.
Now it's even more because COVID has forced more people to do that reckoning with themselves, and that general shift in awakening to a greater amount of people. We're starting to see emerging tech really drive and play an important integral role in all aspects of our lives, and even more. Hyper automation is going to be a key trend. Hyper customization is going to be a key trend, right? Even when it comes down to education, the ability to be online, the ability to have personalized data, and the customization and the personalization is going to be something that we're going to see more and more along anything, whether it's healthcare, whether it's financial services, whether it is education. We're seeing that. We're also seeing more emphasis being put on real sustainable investing. In the past, a lot of impact investing, while there was a lot of good, there was also a lot of lip service, especially with CSR and those types of things. Now we're seeing, companies being more genuine in their commitment to these principles, driven by more consumer savviness and demand to hold these companies accountable. And more so that's great. That's great news.
Right.
And the confluence of using emerging tech deployed for important things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Right.
And we've involved in 2 recent reports on AI emerging tech for things like climate change and sustainability. And there's fascinating work there. We're also seeing the shift away from the old Silicon Valley VC model. And I think, you and I have discussed how the VC model has been broken for some time, and a lot of investors will admit that. And looking at homegrown solutions. So not applying the same Silicon Valley algorithm to measuring success in terms of startups, right? I mean, it's asinine that we measure startups by how much funding they raise, right? Yes. And looking at homegrown solutions with homegrown founders, we're going to continue to see more push for diversity and inclusion in terms of female founders, minority founders, and inclusion as a key piece, right? Diversity won't cut it alone anymore. It's really about inclusion. And so those are some of the encouraging things. We are at a critical point in climate change. It's a bit sobering how little time we have left.
Right.
And so it's to be seen, especially at the government level, how much we're going to be able to achieve, and the continuous exacerbation of issues, social issues, because of fake news, conspiracy theories, and social media driving a lot of that, right? And so that's only going to get worse before it has a chance to get better. Right. And the key thing here is a very painful but necessary shift of mindsets from othering, appointing someone who has a different perspective or political belief as you as the other, as the enemy, right? To more of a sense of understanding that we are each other's keeper, And that sounds very philosophical and very idealistic, but it is going to be this inevitable shift. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but the long-term steady state is going to be better, because we are actively reimagining and rebuilding it for that long-term steady state. That doesn't mean that we're going to see a lot of fluctuation and volatility in between, right? But the long-term steady state is still open for creation, which makes it very exciting, and it has a lot of room for reimagining it for the better.
Right. Okay. So I'll have just one last question to connect everything back to India with the 100 initiative, right? The 100 problems, 100 years. Tell us something about the 100 initiatives and how exactly you see the potential of India's youth in the future post-COVID.
There's so much potential. It's one of the reasons why I love India. And, I keep returning back to it. Just the energy of the young people, the talent, the amazing amount of talent you have in this amazing country. And one thing I love is that there is that hunger and that drive and that earnestness of wanting to do something, that that energy that is incomparable. And so that's really exciting. And I kudos to India for really stepping up and investing in startups and creating startup ecosystems in all parts, even in like tier 4 cities now, right? To encourage youth and to encourage entrepreneurship, because we all know that, globally, there aren't enough jobs to go around. We have to create our own opportunities, right? And the sooner we can do that, and the sooner we can also start alleviating a lot of social tension and a lot of social pressure. What happens when you have millions of unemployed young angry men, right? That's a lot of concerns that societies around the world ask, right? And so that is something that is very encouraging. Where I'm a part of a lot of different social enterprise organizations, advisor to a number of startups, and I see the desire to change, to create a change and a positive impact. Yes, we still see a lot of typical regular startups, but we're also seeing, and every day I'm getting more and more inquiries regarding social enterprises or deploying startup solutions for critical challenges like ag tech, right? Ag tech is a huge fast growing industry for the startup sector in India. And ed tech now, especially since COVID, this huge ed tech boom. And so it's that's really exciting. Climate tech also. And so it's something that I'm very encouraged by. And if we can have the perfect marriage between good policy with good talent and good opportunities with access to resources, right? Then it's a perfect storm for innovation and implementing such an innovation in a way that is sustainable.
Thank you so much for spending almost like an hour with us on a Saturday night. It's been wonderful listening to you again. And we covered a wide range of areas, but the passion is visible. I think the COVID meditative Trivandrum period has given you a better resolve, I think much more clarity, because you look absolutely much more committed and much more optimistic about where we are headed. I hope we get to see you again very soon in Varkala and Kerala. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you so much. I hope so. I hope so. We'll see what happens, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Right. Okay. Have a wonderful night. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.